Welcome to the Conscious Classroom, where we explore the future of education and what it means to create learning environments that truly support human flourishing. I'm your host, Amy Edelstein. In each episode, we'll look at how mindful awareness and systems thinking deepen learning and well-being, why inner strength and self-regulation are essential skills for young people navigating our fast-changing world, and how do we thoughtfully integrate synthetic intelligence without devaluing the heart of our humanity. For educators, leaders, and anyone shaping the future of human development, you'll find practical tools and big-picture perspectives to increase your wonder and your impact. Let's get started. Hello, welcome to this episode of The Conscious Classroom. I'd like to share a beautiful experience I had this past weekend where I was leading a retreat called the Siren's Call, which was contemplative practice, meditation, and creative writing. Writing has always been with me since I was in elementary school, and poetry, I think, saved me and spurred me on in high school, including a summer creative writing experience that let me immerse in my reflection in my craft in a way that regular school doesn't really allow. There was a freedom where we met Bucknell campus for Pennsylvania Governor's School for the Arts. We're taught by college professors, which seems such a huge thing to a 10th grader. And we spent all day reading, writing, discussing, and honing our creative expression. Combining creative practice with contemplation is so very important. As we contemplate, practice mindful awareness, you allow yourself to sink. You allow yourself to open up those doors of perception. You allow yourself to be still and listen for that still, quiet voice just to the side. You allow yourself to let what wants to be written come forth rather than imposing a structure and a preconceived notion of how you're going to write and what you're going to write and even why you're going to write. In this writing group, as in any classroom, what becomes very profound is that those who like to meditate, those who don't like to meditate, those who are good with stillness, those who are not good with stillness, all support one another in the contemplative practice, so that in the guiding and the cues, what happens is everybody starts to regulate with themselves and in the shared space. So this is easy to facilitate in a classroom if you have your own practice, if you have your own mindfulness practice and can drop into that space so that your cues are coming from that place of the unknown. It starts to settle everyone, and there becomes a container for that creativity that allows everyone to be themselves, to have the courage to explore, to reach beyond those edges and see what they find, and to also have trust that a draft carries with it the germ, the seed of an idea and a potential that is valuable. Similarly, in the mindfulness practice, when you let go, there is a trust, that openness to discovery, that sense of allowing the self to regulate and soothe itself so that intimations of the numinous can come forth, will happen. And maybe it's a germ, and maybe it's a millisecond, and maybe it's a flash, and maybe it's much more lasting than that. And you see that among young people you see that at first they're just watching each other and busy with each other and busy with themselves and busy with how they're doing and busy with how they look and busy if they messed up and busy with what they aspire to do and dealing so much with that rush of growth and change physically, hormonally, in terms of their brain development, in terms of their social structure, in terms of their learning. There's so much happening. And when they start letting themselves practice mindfulness, they often can't quite put words to that sense of allowing integration to happen, not trying to fit all those disparate parts together that are still in development, under construction, but to make room for that process of being under construction, which is very much the adolescent period. So this type of melding of mindfulness practice and creative expression can be an incredibly powerful tool to invite students who resist the mindfulness to try and to whet the stone of their creativity so that their craft can be really sharpened and be a natural and authentic and accurate expression of what they'd like to do. Now, what's fascinating is that when you structure some creative time like this, where you have some mindfulness practice guided based on a theme, and then some writing prompts guided based on a theme, then period of individual creativity, and then come back together and share, the diversity of voice that comes through is extraordinary. You might have an individual who writes horror or fantasy or adventure or spy or romance or poetry or self-discovery or grief, sadness, discouragement, anger, delight, love, infatuation. And going around the room and hearing these beautiful different expressions to the same prompt creates a lovely sense of community where the individual voice is acknowledged and welcomed and encouraged and loved, while everyone's still being kept together because we're all experiencing the mindful awareness together, the stillness together, and then we're all turning our attention to a creative prompt that wants to make itself known. There are so many skills that get taught in this, and schools are always trying to quantify and dissect and evaluate those skills. From my perspective, doing something like this simply allows for the joy of discovery and creative expression to be activated, to bring something forth is so important, to see it externalized, to see what was in the imagination come forward. And adolescence is the perfect time for that. They're trying to find their voice. They're trying to have their voice make a mark in the world. And so giving everyone the opportunity for creative expression and for sharing that aloud validates that need, that longing, that pull that is part of adolescent development. So that's the joy of simply creating. The mindfulness practice, as I mentioned before, creates an individual reflection in a shared space, in a shared community. Having that sense of autonomy, no one's telling you what to think, what to feel. One's simply given the opportunity to think and feel and be oneself as just as you are, allows students that time to be with themselves in a thoughtful way, not being with themselves in a lonely way, where they're up late at night and they can't sleep because they feel like they don't have friends, they feel alone. It's very hard to be with yourself in a constructive way when the predominant emotion is loneliness, which so many teens are experiencing these days. So much alienation, not enough human friendship. So being able to be with yourself, but not in a lonely place through mindfulness practice, through conscious awareness, helps teens develop and hone and thicken that positive sense of self, that sense that they matter, that they're present, that they're available, that they're worthy, that their feelings and thoughts and physicality and sensations are one piece. And that stillness allows it all to integrate. And it takes practice. It takes practice over and over again for them to be able to slip into that stillness in a way that is nourishing. But when I read our end of program open expressions where they talk about what they've learned, 12 weeks practicing once or twice during a session every week is plenty to give them that experience that they can be with themselves. And they can be with themselves in community. They don't have to go off. They don't have to negate. They don't have to shut out the classmate who's annoying them, or the teacher that they resent, or the parent who's getting on their nerves. When you learn to practice mindful awareness and you can be with yourself in the meditation, it doesn't really matter what's happening in the outside world. You're able to have that inner vortex, that infinite vortex of consciousness that gives you all the space in the world to exist, where you're not feeling encroached on by everybody around you, even if your classmates are sitting 3 feet away. So this is a powerful and important way to be. The process of taking a guided prompt in an open way and doing some creative writing on that challenges and develops some beautiful skills, because it's structured, and yet the execution is completely open. And for those young people who want to follow a plan, they want to do the assignment exactly as it's written, they want to build out their problem steps and solution steps and document them, it can be challenging. What do I write about? I'm empty. I don't have any thoughts. I'm not creative. Look, so-and-so's scribbling away. They're so creative. So it gives students the opportunity, which is an opportunity, to experience friction at the edges, to experience frustration, to experience writer's block, to experience self-doubt, to experience feeling empty-handed. These are good experiences for students to have in a constructive environment. With our AI coaches and tutors, what's getting sanded down and smoothed out in young people's experience is that sense of creative friction, of positive friction, a friction that develops our wherewithal, our capacities to withstand difficulty, unpleasant emotions. That's a good thing, and it's important to develop. And learning, educational environments are the perfect place for it. They're constantly pushing students to better themselves. And right now, of course, sports is a place, athletics is a place where students are okay to be pushed. But more and more in the classroom, there's a sense that they should only be guided without any friction. I don't believe that will enhance our passion to excel or to reach, to allow our higher potentials to come forth. Creativity is, and self-actualization is a birthing process. We have to squeeze ourselves through that narrow passage to emerge out into a new iteration of understanding, depth, ability, capacity, and love. So this kind of creative writing, of giving students a prompt where they've just let everything be as it is, where they've just meditated, emptied their minds as the dust of all the activity settles, can create that friction. And they have to learn to sit through it. They have to learn to not freak out. They have to learn to wait and then leap. Take that leap to follow that germ of a thought that comes forward and let that emerge, let that develop into a character, a story, a poem, a feeling, an emotion, a metaphor, a joke that wants to be expressed. Allowing ourselves to be at that edge and to trust blind, to trust that germ of a thought is another really important experience. Character building for young emerging adults. So then there's this raw material that comes out. Then there's the process of refinement. And students learn, oh, I didn't pop out perfectly. It's a raw expression. It needs to be worked. And sometimes that working of it ruins the spark. And then they have to go back and recalibrate again and listen for authenticity. Listen for that creative voice. Listen for that creative spark. Listen for what is meant to come. That's powerful. That is so very important. So the refinement process teaches students that their innate talent and capacity exists, and then there's skill. So that's why learning the craft, in this case of writing, rhyme, meter, metaphor, alliteration, using the art of onomatopoetic phrases, tension building, character development, allowing expression of something that is unwanted to come forward. Fantasy, allowing oneself to imagine stories that have nothing to do with one's own life, and yet letting those characters have a life of their own. Children have an amazing imagination when they're young. You see 5-year-olds playing with their stuffed animals and the worlds they create, the characters, the events as they work out the stuff of life in their imagination. That capacity is still there, yet with more nuance and more variation in adolescence. We don't want students to lose that imagination, especially through consuming too much of the imagination of others, too much media, not enough creating. So learning the skills to refine their craft, and when they realize that they don't quite have the skills, then they start paying attention in English. When you're analyzing beautiful writing and complex character development and suspense and how it's done, it's going to have a meaning. It's going to have an application. It's going to help them with what they want to express. Then the sharing together develops that confidence of not being perfect, but being authentic. This is the truest expression I could do. in my 15 minutes. Of course, 15 minutes isn't enough time to develop something perfectly. So they're thrown in the deep end and they share. And maybe they discover that the classmate they wrote off is really funny. They use words in an amazing way. They have jokes, or they bring to life horror and suspense and monsters or werewolves. And friendships develop through this shared process of creating and sharing, rinse and repeat. It can create unlikely friendships in a classroom because it takes away the zero-sum competitiveness, where I got the highest grade, therefore you didn't. I aced the exam compared to what you did. This is, I made it through the process of meditating, letting everything go, thinking about a prompt, articulating, getting over my stage fright, reading and sharing, and discovering that joy. And you discovered that joy too. So everyone starts to experience that joy in their own process of creativity and the happiness and delight at seeing other people come forward, come into themselves through that process of creativity. The humor, the turn of phrase, the rhyme, the spoken word, the sadness, the hard experiences, the mundane experiences turned into something delightful. This process of merging meditation and creative writing, has certainly been done by many. Much has been written about it. I don't know if it was practiced by the monastics in the forest way back when, but we certainly have handed down through the ages so many examples of writing that has come from the hearts and consciousness of those who have allowed themselves to experience that sense of the numinous, the expansiveness, the brilliance, the lightness of being. So I invite you in any of your work with young people, whether it's your grandchild, your child, your niece or nephew, your youth rec center, to experiment with this and put yourself in the center of it as you lead the guided contemplation, the meditation. You also let yourself go. And as you form the prompt and share that prompt, go right. So let your own process inform your way of facilitating both stillness and creative expression in the young people you work with. It's really a lot of fun. So let's close this with a guided practice. You can allow yourself to settle in to your own sense of self, dropping down, dropping into yourself. And you can allow your breath to deepen, letting go of anticipation, expectations, where you need to be, whether you should be responding to someone or something. As always, please don't do this when you're driving, save it for home. And create an image in your mind's eye of just an opening in the forest trees so that you're in a little circle where the sunlight can come through the tall branches and you're still and steady, feeling that sense of the gentle life around you, the movement, the rustle of leaves, the small animals scurrying. The ants and the spiders busy. The things you can't see or hear that are still moving, the sap flowing, the mycelium communicating, the slow growth, the faster decay, and feeling that in yourself, that sense of being alone in the forest, yet not alone, surrounded by the old souls of the tall trees, the generations of deer, birds. Feel a sense of time going way back, millions of years, tens of millions of years to the dinosaurs. And before that, the slow movement of time. And yet that spot in that forest has been there since the earth formed. Different substance over the eras. Allow yourself to enjoy that spaciousness and stillness, letting yourself experience the softening around your edges, a porousness, like the echoes of our evolutionary beginnings, coming from way back in time, are still reaching you now. And just be in that stillness and quiet, that listening, that awareness of the layers of life, change, time. Thanks for joining me on The Conscious Classroom. If this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and leave a review. It really helps other people like you find the show. And thank you so much for caring about the inner lives of young people and the future of education. I'm your host, Amy Edelstein, and I look forward to seeing you next time.